Wait a second! As I was saying, here's something new from Pepsi.
You can cash this.
Just buy any Pepsi product, look under their caps or crowns, you can win up to 1,000 pesos.
You can cash this.
Instantly.
Instantly.
So don't just walk, run, and get your cash crowns now.
What
are you waiting for?
If you were given a chance to win $40,000 by simply buying a soda pop, would you do it? Most of us here would agree to this, but of course, one would also query, what was the catch? Hey there folks, welcome to Impending Obsolescence. Here we discuss obscure controversies, conspiracies, and events. My name's MC, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm skeptical and really curious. But aren't we all? Oftentimes, the official story is true, but sometimes it's not. So if this is your liking, grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and relax as we dive into today's topic. Today, we'll be discussing the controversial Pepsi number fever in the Philippines. I got to admit, I kind of wish I was already born during this time while it was happening in the country, Not particularly to join in the promo, but more to have a first-hand experience of what actually happened and the chaos that ensues because of it. So, for reference, this took place in the second month of 1992. Back then, PepsiCo branch in the country announced that they would print numbers ranging from 001 to 999 inside the caps or crowns of Pepsi, 7-Up, Mountain Dew, and Mirinda bottles. Certain numbers could be redeemed for prices, which range from 100 pesos or $4 to a million pesos, roughly 40,000 US dollars. That's about a little over 84,000 US dollars in today's money. For context, the Philippines is categorized as a developing country based on its GDP, and back then the country's economy was even worse. This in part due to events that took place in the 70s through the 80s, as well as the Industrial Revolution that the country was not yet able to adapt to. So taking all of this into consideration, the price that the promotion was offering was a huge thing to the average Filipino worker, equating to over 600 times the average monthly salary in the country at the time. In spite of the country's financial situation, the market share of Pepsi was still rather large in the country. Together with Argentina, Chile, Guatemala, and Mexico, the Philippines was chosen to receive this marketing ploy in the hopes of increasing the interest of the product in the country. In an article from Bloomberg News, it is stated, Number Fever was the brainchild of an executive named Pedro Vergara, a Chilean who worked for the promotions department in New York. After a successful US rollout, Pepsi-Cola International Chief Executive Official Christopher Sinclair made it part of his strategy to fight Coca-Cola abroad. Since becoming the global arm's youngest CEO at 38, Sinclair had developed a reputation as a battlefield commander. Visiting 77 countries in 6 months, he was dismayed to find the world's grocery aisles awash with Coca-Cola Red, as fortune put it. Pepsi hired a Mexican company, DG Consulteros, to bring number fever to Argentina, Chile, Guatemala, Mexico, and the Philippines, where it truly caught fire. Monthly sales there quickly jumped from $10 million to $40 million, and its market share from 19.4% to 24.9%. Bottling plants roared 20 hours a day, doubling their usual production. An aggressive ad campaign dominated the media with 29 radio stations and 4 newspaper circulation the winning numbers. The promotion, initially scheduled to end on May 8, was extended by 5 weeks. By then, number fever was verging on number hysteria. There was even an incident where a cop jailed a maid accused of stealing her employer's winning crown, as the bottle caps were known. And there was another Pepsi sales people were murdered following a dispute over another crown. From the get-go, the promo was obviously causing some issues, but it was still rather effective. This is where the ugly head of capitalism really gets to me. As a marketing professional, I know all too well that a lot of companies are willing to overlook this sometimes. And then even present false advertising just to reach a profit margin. I know individuals have their own choice in all of this, but still, I think it's a form of exploitation, giving false hopes to folks who are in obvious needs and are willing to do anything just to get necessary. On the 25th of May 1992, the World Tonight program in Channel 2 announced that the ground prize number for that day was 349. Grand prize winning bottle caps were tightly controlled by PepsiCo using their computer-controlled number generator. There were two bottle caps with that day's winning number printed inside of them, as well as security code for confirmation which had been produced and distributed. However, before the contest was extended to add new winning numbers, 800,000 regular bottle caps had already been printed with the number 349 due to a technical error, but without the security code. These bottle caps were altogether worth around $32 billion US, and because of this, thousands of Filipino rushed to Pepsi bottle plants to claim their prizes. Pepsi Philippines initially responded that the erroneously printed bottle caps did not have the confirmation security code and therefore could not be redeemed. The following day, local newspapers announced that the winning number was actually in fact 134, adding to the confusion. After an emergency meeting of PepsiCo Philippines and PepsiCo executives on the 27th of the same month, the company decided to offer 500 pesos or $18 to holders of mistakenly printed bottle caps as a gesture of goodwill. This offer would be accepted by over 480,000 people at a cost to PepsiCo of 249 million pesos or $8.9 million. However, despite some accepting the offer of the company as compensation, many other 349 cap holders refused the offer, even to the point of many Filipinos using the term 349 as a generic term for being duped or conned. During this time, many consumer groups also emerged like the 349 Alliance, which organized a boycott of all Pepsi products and held rallies outside the office of Pepsi Philippines, as well as Philippine government offices. Most of these protests were rather peaceful. However, on the 13th of February 1993, a school teacher and a 5-year-old child were accidentally killed by a homemade bomb in Manila that was supposedly intended to be thrown at a Pepsi truck. In another incident in May of the same year, 3 Pepsi Philippine employees in Davao were killed by a grenade thrown into a warehouse. This is on top of the many death threats that Pepsi Philippines received, as well as 37 company trucks that were vandalized and damaged by being pushed over, stoned, and set on fire. In the same year, about 22,000 people took legal action against PepsiCo. At least 689 civil suits and 5,200 criminal complaints for fraud and deception were filed. In January 1993, Pepsi paid a fine of 150 pesos or over $2,700 to the Department of Trade and Industry for violating the approved conditions of the promotion. On June 24, 1996, trial court awarded the plaintiffs in one of the lawsuits 10,000 pesos or about $380 in each for moral damages. 3 dissatisfied plaintiffs appealed, and on July 3, 2001, the appellate court awarded these 3 plaintiffs 30,000 pesos or about $570 each, as well as attorney fees. Pepsi Philippines would later try to appeal against this decision. The lawsuit would reach the Philippine Supreme Court, which in 2006 ruled that Pepsi Philippines is not liable to pay the amount printed in the crowns to their holders, nor are they liable for damages caused, and that the issues surrounding the 349 incident have been laid to rest and must no longer be disturbed in this decision. Of course, this will be a program about conspiracies if we didn't, discuss about the conspiracies. So, to begin, there was a conspiracy about terrorism and extortion. Saying Pepsi has become the choice of new generation criminal in civil claims that filed against Pepsi across the Philippines far outnumber those against the late President Ferdinand E. Marcos and his wife Imelda, who are accused of looting up to $10 billion during their reign. At last count, more than 22,000 people have filed 689 civil suits seeking damages from Pepsi, plus more than 5,200 criminal complaints for fraud and deception. The company says only a handful of trials have begun, but the nation's appeals court this month appealed arrest orders against 10 local Pepsi executives. The company has appealed and no arrests have been made. Even more remarkably, in a country crippled by daily electric blackouts, endemic corruption and poverty that is among the most pervasive in Asia, the only protests that regularly draw angry crowds into the streets are those against Pepsi. In ways the government never could, the anti-Pepsi fever has brought together communist rebels and an army generals, well-dressed Manila matrons and barefoot rural peasants all hold 349 caps. This has unified the people. Pepsi has cheated the Philippine people. Bambi Santos, and an anti-Pepsi activist and evangelist, billowed in a bullhorn at a recent rally of several hundred banner-waging, drum-beating people in Manila's business district. The protest ended abruptly moments later when a rock tossed the crowd smashed a window in the government's trade industry office and was approved that which had approved the Pepsi promotion. Such violence reflects conditions in the Philippines where foreigners, particularly Americans, are frequently blamed for this country's problems. Kenneth Ross, spokesman for PepsiCo Coal International, which owns 19% of the local bottling company, said the company's position is clear. We will not be held hostage to extortion and terrorism, we said in telephone interview from Purchase, New York. Orchestrated bombing. The commotion stretched well into 1993, at which point a sensational new twist captured local headlines. In December of that year, a police officer filed a report alleging that the bombing and riots were not the result of protesters. They were insisted, deliberated acts of self-sabotage by Pepsi against itself. The accusation, which was reported in the Chicago Tribune, came from Artemio Sacagawea, chief of the Organized Crime Division of the country's National Bureau of Investigation. In his brief, Sacagawea reported to Manila prosecutors that a man had confessed to being a Pepsi security guard and knew of 3 mercenaries who were hired by the company to damage their property. In doing so, Sacagawea claimed they could portray the anti-Pepsi groups as being violent and labeled as terrorists, harming their position in court. Almost immediately, Sacagawea's superiors dismissed these accusations and stated the officer's report had already been discredited. A Pepsi lawyer refuted the allegation, then Senator Macapagal Arroyo floated a slightly more plausible theory. Rebel bottles, she said, were acting out in order to weaken Pepsi's grip on the market. There is no such thing as bad publicity. Another theory regarding this points back to the fact that PepsiCo could have prevented this from happening from the start. As stated in 1994 report, points out that it was not the first time that Pepsi encountered a problem with their number fever promotion, since an eerily similar situation occurred in Chile in April 1992. But despite this, the company never bothered solving the issue to prevent it from happening elsewhere. Another thing to point out is that it was only after the printing incident that occurred have they made an announcement that a security code was necessary to claim the prize. This is in spite of the promo ad not stating anything regarding this whatsoever. Following the day of the printing error, the PepsiCo executive, both in the Philippines and US, had an emergency meeting on how to proceed, all agreeing that honoring the perceived value of all the caps was economically impossible for them to justify, costing them possibly tens of billions of dollars. Even back then, Pepsi was a massive company, but despite all of this, they've deflected most faults, only offering $18 to $20 for each cap holder as a goodwill gesture. This did not set well at all with most of the cap holders, even arguing that Pepsi had only done this to lessen the financial burden they incurred and didn't care about the administrative error and damage they have caused. Despite the many conspiracies surrounding this issue, we can never really be sure of who to blame, and even if this could have been really avoided. A certain law even comes to my mind while doing my research on this, specifically Murphy's Law, which states that whatever may go wrong would most definitely go wrong. Whatever the real motives of Pepsi, the company has proven itself to be effective, and one could even argue successful. The entire number fever promotion was intended to be a fun way to increase Pepsi's revenue, and for a time it did. Market share jumped from 19% to over 24%. Sales increased by a reported 40% during the contest. Bottling plants ran 20 hours a day, doubling their usual production. The total cost of the promotion was to be manageable $2 million, but instead bubbled to over $10 million sans the legal fees. It was just tragic that a random software error would cause such disastrous consequences. Decades may have already passed, but the effects of this are still felt and remembered by those who were there when the chaos was happening. When I was younger, I would sometimes wonder why Pepsi wasn't so prominent in gatherings or even TV ads compared to Coca-Cola or even other soda pop brands. But after hearing this and reading about this incident, it kind of made sense to me. The event may have been long past, but the replication of the incident lives on, and the market share of Pepsi in the country may never truly recover.